Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Megan and I'm going to be talking about all things baby solids. So I do have a daughter who is 7.5 months, almost 8 months. I'm a first-time mom, so it's my first time doing the whole solids journey, and I wanted to talk through everything I found through research, what my doctor has told me, and things that I've learned through experience so far so that you know how to best tackle feeding your baby some solids. So you can start feeding your baby solids once they hit 6 months and either can hold up their head, have teeth, or show interest in your food. We had our 6-month appointment on her 6-month birthday and started solids the following week. She was able to hold her head at that time. She had not had any teeth, but since she's now 7.5 months, she now has her first tooth. But she was showing a ton of interest in solids and was always trying to get the food on her plate. Now, besides just those facts, I think something that's also really important before starting your solids journey is making sure that you understand choking and what to do. I had signed up for a CPR class prior to giving birth, although I'm still working my way through the course, to be honest, but I have surpassed the choking section. I would definitely recommend taking a CPR class, or even if you have, if it's been a minute, maybe refresh yourself, because that is something that can happen once you start introducing solids, and you want to make sure that you know what to do if that does happen. Next is where they're going to sit. So when she first started solids, we had the bumbo seat, and we just put her in there and then ordered one of those trays that you can insert on top of it. She's now in a high chair, but a couple of thoughts on the bumbo and the tray. First, don't order the tray. I will show you in a second. I'll insert some footage over this talking, but it is so difficult to put in and take out. I literally cannot do it. I've used it twice and had my husband do it both times. It's so, like, you have to really press hard. It's very difficult. So I would not recommend that insert, or maybe order a different one. I got mine on Amazon. I don't know if I would do a bumbo in the future. I think that the bumbo was so great for her learning how to sit better, and I remember when I first put her in it, she was very shaky, and it took a lot of core strength, and by the end she was so much better at sitting. So I really like it for those facts. But as she is now starting to crawl, she has had some asymmetrical crawling. If you guys want to know more about that, I am considering doing a whole separate video on crawling, so let me know in the comments if that's something you would want. But I was doing research, and sitting in the bumbo can actually lead to asymmetrical crawling because it holds their hips out wider. So just be careful if that's something you do consider doing as their seat. Otherwise, high chair is great. I've been loving the high chair, and that's working a lot better for us. So for the first couple of weeks, I just used a teether, a mesh teether. I just put avocado, banana, strawberry, and cucumber, I believe. Those were the first 4 things I gave her. The avocado and banana were great to use for there because they're already very squishy, soft, creamy food. So she was able to actually eat it through the mesh. The strawberry and cucumber were a lot more difficult, and she more so just got the flavor. Something about the mesh teethers to know is you can't taste, or they can't taste, the texture. So that is something to note, but it was a great starter food, especially if you haven't taken your CPR class. You don't have to worry about choking because it's coming through these tiny, tiny holes. So it's not as much of a concern, and it's a good way to get them to start learning and experimenting with solids, and they can hold it themselves too, which I know in her case, even with spoons, she wants to feed herself for everything. So that was a really great starter tool, especially because they're not eating very much in the beginning. You're only feeding them 1 to 2 ounces, and so that mesh teether is really great for fitting a small amount in. I would recommend a food scale, especially in the beginning, just so you can get an idea of how much 1 to 2 ounces is. After that, you can start increasing food over time. I don't think it's as important, especially because they don't eat very much, but if that's something you really want to make sure you get, I would recommend a food scale. We did use this when we first started, but I don't use it as much because she eats such a small amount of what I'm feeding her. Also, we did order some sippy cups. We ordered a few different kinds. I'll insert here again the ones we got for her. And this was the first time we were able to introduce water to her. And something I do recommend is filling up the water all the way to the top, because when I was only filling 1 to 2 ounces on there. It was so little in the sippy cup that she could barely get any out, and she's still getting used to sipping through a straw and holding it and all these things. So by filling it to the top, it's a lot easier for them to get liquid through the straw, but just be careful to make sure they're not going more than 1 to 2 ounces of that sippy cup once they hit that pour off the water. The next thing is only expose them to one food for 3 days. This is so that you can identify any allergens, even if it's not a popular allergy type food. It's still good to do this. That way you can see if there's an allergy and not be unsure of what food caused the allergy. I also think it's really good for re-exposing them to food. I feel like for several of the foods, especially the first ones we exposed her to, the first 2 days she would throw it or gag or give me a face, and then by the 3rd day she was eating it and she enjoyed it a lot more. So I think it's really great for both of those things. So I'm starting with vegetables, then going into proteins, then fruits, then eggs, then nut butters, and then grains. This is based on my own research as well as what the pediatrician recommended. Vegetables are really great to start with because you want to not expose them to super sweet things right off the bat. If you expose them to fruit right away, for example, they might get used to that more sugary taste and expect everything to taste like that. So starting with vegetables as our first foods is a really great one to start with. When you're moving through proteins, eggs, and nut butters, there's a lot of allergens in those categories. So when I hit those, I'm still currently just doing vegetables. I plan on just doing that one food for the whole week. That way I can identify if there is an allergy and also give a very small amount. That way you can try to limit any sort of reaction by just giving them a small amount and seeing how they do with that. When I first started, I did 1 vegetable a week. Now I'm currently doing 2 vegetables, rotating every few days. And starting next month, when she's 8 months old, I'm gonna be introducing a protein plus 2 vegetables. Once I get through the vegetables, moving on to fruits, etc. So those are the categories in the order that I'm following. The main allergens to be aware of are eggs, shellfish, any sort of seafood, gluten, dairy. Cow's milk in general, they should not have until they're 1 year old. Plus, honey is dangerous in babies under 1, and fruit juice. So just be aware of those, and nuts as well. Another thing to know is just pre-made pouches. A lot of them are marketed as something that is healthy and good for your baby. And just be sure to check the ingredients because a lot of them, the food they're marketing, so let's say carrots, is the last ingredient, meaning it has the least amount out of all the ingredients of the carrot in that item. And the top ingredients will be sugar, corn syrup, things like that. They do make healthier ones where it's just the carrots or just whatever the food is, but those tend to be a lot pricier. So if you have the time, I definitely recommend making your purees at home. That's what I do, and it's super simple, at least for vegetables so far, since that's all I've done. I usually just cut them up, boil them to soften them, and then I'll blend them in a food blender with a little bit of water, and that's how I'll make the puree. So it really doesn't take that much time. I usually will make them while she's already in her high chair eating another one of her foods, and it takes maybe 10 minutes, and it's way more cost effective, and I'll use that same vegetable for our meals that week too. Since she's not eating the entire thing, she's eating a very small portion of it, and it's much healthier. I know all she's eating is just some of that water and the vegetable.
What do you think? Not the right side. Can you do the other side? Some butternut squash. Yummy. You see? Butternut squash. But you can put your spoon in it. See? And then you can hold it like this. You can hold it, see? Then it goes in your mouth. It goes in your mouth. Yummy. Okay, I'll let you just explore that.
She loves the butternut squash so much, she's literally eating it off her little table. Okay, do you want to mention, because she just did a little bit of a gagging reflex, had some throw up, make sure you're not putting too much in their mouth at one time, but it is okay if that happens because they're actually developing their gag reflex, which is important for them so that when you do give them chunkier foods, they'll actually know how to not choke. They'll know how to have that gag reflex to prevent choking. So don't be alarmed, make sure they're okay if they're actually choking. As I mentioned earlier, take a CPR class, know what to do. I just kind of patted her back, but she handled it all on her own anyway and just had some come out. She had too much in her mouth, but it is an okay thing if that happens because the gag reflex will prevent them from choking once they have chunkier food.
Are you gonna show me your tooth? Is that the butternut squash? You show me the butternut squash? Is that your tooth?
As you can see, they get very messy, so definitely make sure I take off all of her clothes to minimize stains. I did not do that the first few times and have some very stained avocado clothing. And then she always gets it in her neck and all over in her diaper, so just make sure you thoroughly clean her after, or him, so that they're not walking around with butternut squash in them all day. Something else I just want to point out too is I feed her until she no longer wants to feed. So until she pushes the spoon away, until she's kind of moving her head. Not if she does it once, but if she does it a few times in a row, then that's when I give her the water. And then when she's either had enough water or isn't interested in that too, or is just throwing it, then that's when I'll take her down and clean her. She'll usually get fussy too when she's done being in there, so that's when I'll clean her and move her off. Now the goal with solids is to slowly increase their intake of the food over time so that by the time they're 1 year old, that is their main diet. Up until 1 year old, milk, whether breast milk or formula, should still be their main diet. And then at 1 year old, hopefully those vegetables, proteins, fruits, and things you've introduced to them are starting to become more of the primary source. Okay, and now for everyone's favorite conversation topic, poop. It does change their poop. First, it might make it harder. Now, when I first gave her solids that first night, that was the one time in her entire life that she seemed like it was a little difficult for her to poop. She never had this issue any other time, so I don't know if it was her experiencing solids in her body for the first time, but something you can do to help avoid constipation is hydrate them after they're done eating. So you can give them a little bit of water in their sippy cup, give them your breast milk or formula, whatever your primary milk intake is, and then make sure they get some movement. So they're on the ground playing or doing whatever, getting their body to move. This will help them to poop freely. Another thing to note about poop is it will change the smell and the color and the consistency. So for example, the first food I gave her was avocado, and her poop was green for probably a couple of weeks after that. Part of that was because she kept getting sick, but every time I give her avocado, her poop is green. So it might change the color. It does make their poop smell more now that they're off a fully milk diet. So just know that, and the texture might be different too. Sometimes you'll see little pieces of sweet potato in her poop. So just know all of those things, they are normal, but if you're unsure, obviously ask your doctor or do some research. And certain foods do cause more of a risk for constipation, such as sweet potato or cheese. So know that ahead of time too. And maybe give a little less quantity of the more constipation heavy foods. But I have given her sweet potato, I've given her banana, which is another one, and she didn't seem affected by that. Only avocado the very first night. And then another great topic that everyone loves to talk about is your period. Now, a lot of times, if you're solely breastfeeding, you will not have your period while you're breastfeeding. As soon as you start introducing solids, you do have the chance of bringing your period back. I still do not have my period back, but it's something to note that that is a possibility. And then once they hit 9 months, you are able to introduce soft foods to them, finger foods. I would consult with your pediatrician about that, but that is the recommended guidelines. Also for the allergen foods, something to note that I'm personally doing, there's no research behind this, but just something I'm doing is I'm not going to give them back to back. So for example, you do nut butters as a category. I'm not going to give her peanut butter and then the next week give her almond butter, because if she is having reactions, I don't want to seriously harm her by giving her a bunch of allergy heavy food if she's allergic. So I'm going to space them out a couple of weeks. I will show you the schedule that I'm currently feeding her and what we'll go through until she's about 1 year and 4 months. But my plan is that when she hits 1 year, I'll still be feeding her solid foods at every meal and for snacks, but still introducing 2 new foods a week until I hit all of the new ones, which will be at 1 year and 4 months. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.